It's that time of the month again. Here is our full UFC 314 full card predictions. We're starting with those early prelims, working all our way up to the main event. Lucas, let's get it started. Let's quickly run through these early prelim fights.
Wait, you don't want to break down Nora Cornell versus Haley Cowan? Two legendary fighters making the Hall of Fame?
Nope.
All right, well, I do. So there wasn't much to really go off on this one. I'm going to be honest, guys. They have a pretty similar record. Nora Cornell is 8-2. Haley Cowan is 7-3. So pretty much that's how I made my pick. I thought, Nora Cornell, she's 2-1 inside the UFC instead of 1-1 like Haley Cowan. So, I mean, guys, this was clear. If you got Haley Cowan, you're a casual.
Yeah, Nora Cornell. Cornwall?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nora Cornwall decision incoming.
Could be up there with the GOAT status pretty soon. I'm going to be honest. So, yeah, that's what we both have, I think, decision.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get going. Next fight, we got the legend, Tresean Gore.
Tresean Gore might be the most African-American name of all time.
And one of the most attractive fighters on the roster.
Imagine Tresean Gore was white somehow.
That would be such a throw. Versus Marco Tulio. This one, in my opinion, was one of the easiest ones to predict on the early prelims. Tresean Gore's ass at everything, bro.
He got KO'd by Brundage.
Yeah, that's all you need to say, really. He has a guillotine, and that is literally it. He's landed I think he's actually locked in 2 guillotines in his last 2 fights, maybe. So he's kind of cooking. Dustin Poirier is a little bit jealous of this fighter, but Marco Tulio, I think it's going to be around 2 or 3 KO. That's what I'm feeling.
I'm pretty confident with the Tulio. I don't love late KOs and low level fights just because
they're ass, bro.
Yeah, so around 2 KO.
All right, I like that. Also, I feel like we're gonna realize really quickly in this fight if Marco Tulio can't defend any takedowns, we're just cooked. He's cooked.
Let's hope he can.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, you can take this one away.
Yeah, dude, this name is actually the weird. I've listened to so many people say this name and they all say it differently, so I'm sure we're gonna say it differently. I pronounce it Sumaderji. I don't know. Versus Mitch Raposo. Also, Sumaderji has one name. It's just Sumaderji. So
that's aura. That's aura. Give me Sumaderji.
All right. History. Mitch Raposo recently won a split decision versus Andre Lima, which is actually very impressive. Very close fight. Sumaderji's last fight was also a close fight with Charles Johnson. And Johnson pieced up Joshua Van and KO'd him. So that's MMA math. This one I was very split on because it's flyweight. Realistically, anything could happen. So I'm going to go with Sumaderji to get this one done.
Give me the Sumaderji decision here.
And I knew you were going to pick that because he's Asian.
Yeah.
It's just a free
Literally
ball.
In our notes later on for Yan Janan, everyone knows how I feel about Asian fighters was the first thing I wrote.
So you have a history with Asians. All right, and last fight on the early prelims, we got Cedric Dumas versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk.
Banger potential incoming.
I think this could be good if they both lock in.
It's either good or bad. There's no was it okay fight?
Yeah.
No, it's either fight of the night potential or cut them both.
The only thing with Cedric Dumas is I haven't seen anything good ever. Yeah. He's supposed to be this guy who's good on the feet, but he's just not good on the feet. Doesn't have any ground game. I don't see a world in where Cedric Dumas has any chance to win this because Oleksiejczuk has a good chin. He's a bit of a blockhead. So it's not like Cedric Dumas is going to get lucky. This is middleweight, so, it could happen. But
Dumas might pull out that hood trick.
Dude, it's just so unlikely. I don't see Mikhail Oleksiejczuk getting subbed by Cedric Dumas.
No.
It's just impossible. And Oleksiejczuk knocked down Kevin Holland, which is actually impressive.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw Kevin Holland knocked down? MVP didn't do it.
Oleksiejczuk, probably.
Exactly, the GOAT. So I'm going Oleksiejczuk. I think it's probably going to be a decision. This is pretty low level.
I'm also feeling a Oleksiejczuk decision. So we're on the same page for our early prelims.
I think we're going to have some differences.
I think there's going to be a lot, maybe our most ever differences on this card.
This is such a good card, dude. I'm so excited.
All right, first prelim fight. It's actually listed as the last prelim in some places, but I'm pretty sure this is surely the first prelim.
Yeah, it's the first.
But Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa. This is it's a pretty good prelim card. So this is by far the prelim I'm looking forward to the lowest.
Yeah, it doesn't have name value.
Well, I went to say least, but then I went most. The lowest.
The lowest.
The least and the most.
Yes.
you know how it goes. But, both fighters, similar records, pretty similar fighters. But Arosa is a slightly worse, I would say, striker and then submission artist. Elkins has like a 75-ish% finish rate in the UFC, which is pretty good. And I think that Arosa may have the advantage on the ground when it comes to like controlling, but Elkins is a little bit more active on the ground. And Arosa does have back-to-back guillotine wins, okay?
Oh, he's cooking. He's cooking up something special.
Third time's the charm. He might get it done. But I think that Elkins will keep this fight competitive, but inevitably we'll see Arosa pick up the decision win.
Yeah, I think Darren Elkins has fallen off a bit of a cliff. He was on a pretty good run back in the day, but he ain't the same no more, man. He's getting older. Julian Arosa, he's picking up good wins, actually. He's not on a run. I'm not going to say Julian Arosa's on a run, but he has more recent impressive wins than Darren Elkins. I think that's all you can go
Yeah,
on.
and I think that Elkins is going to struggle to submit Arosa. And I think Arosa is going to struggle to submit Elkins. I think that on the ground, they're probably going to neutralize each other. Elkins has only been submitted once by Charles do Bronx Oliveira. So, getting submitted
there.
by Charles,
I want that, honestly.
Yeah. It's like later on in the card, we'll talk about Chandler versus Patty in the jiu-jitsu. It's like, Chandler, he got submitted by Dustin Poirier or submitted by Charles. There's some differences to submission wins, and losses. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Arosa decision here.
Yeah, I think Arosa could get a finish because Darren Elkins, he doesn't have the greatest chin. So I'm going to go maybe round 3 KO.
Okay.
All right, just to switch it up. Might as well.
But we both are 5 for 5, same picks.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. Is this where we're going to switch up? The vet versus the Rook.
I doubt it. I think
Jim Miller.
A year ago, maybe this would have been or maybe even 2 years ago.
Pre-300.
Yeah, this would have been an interesting fight because Chase Hooper was still early in development, I would say. He was coming off some losses, and Jim Miller was a little bit younger, He's not really aging that much, it seems like, but he is just slowly getting slower on the feet, especially.
The one thing I'm worried about is they love, throughout life, they love to talk about man strength, and I'm convinced Jim Miller has.
He's got it.
He's got man strength. So,
sure.
Is there a chance Chase Hooper struggles on the ground with Jim Miller? There is the chance, but I just think that Chase Miller?
He's adopted now.
Guys, I just got cooked at school, so, had to leave class early to come here. That's my commitment to you guys. But, Chase Hooper is actually skilled on the ground, and I think that, maybe if this was a year or two ago for Chase Hooper, I think Jim Miller cooks it,
really?
Like what you were saying.
I think it's close. But Chase Hooper's so good now.
Yeah.
He's actually, one of the best prospects right now.
His offensive grappling, the only thing you can compare it to is do Bronx.
Yeah, he finds submissions really well. He flows incredibly well. And Jim Miller, it's not like he's known for being this wizard on the ground. At least Clay Guida, which was Chase Hooper's last opponent, Clay Guida has competed in jiu-jitsu tournaments, and he still couldn't put up a fight against Chase Hooper. So I think Hooper is going to have the advantage with his long range in striking. He's 6'1" in lightweight, so I think he's going to be able to land punches on the outside. Jim Miller looked really tired in the second and third rounds against Bobby Green, just couldn't get anything going.
And then he died.
He actually died from a heart attack. Yeah. So I think this is going to be easy for Chase Hooper, honestly. I think it's a layup.
Easy.
I don't know
about easy because Jim Miller, he's a legit staple veteran of that lightweight division, but I think that Hooper is good enough. If Hooper was 15-0, no chance. It's Jim Miller all day. But because he has a couple losses on his record, I think that he gets that round 2 sub, and I'm thinking rear naked choke.
Interesting. You know what? I'm going to go with a round 1 ground and pound finish.
Okay.
I think Jim Miller just doesn't have that chin on him.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Lucas, take this one away.
Verna Jandiroba versus Yan Xiaonan.
All right, I'm going to start it off. My first line I wrote here. Everyone knows I love an Asian fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's kind of flat, though.
What?
What? She is.
She's a UFC fighter.
Well, that doesn't dictate. We got Mackenzie Dern and Tracy Cortez.
Back to the script, man.
Sorry. Okay. We don't objectify.
Jan's coming off her dominant win over Tabitha Ricci.
Dude, that was one of the most dominant
Where
performances
she just looked
seen.
she looked unreal. And then before that, obviously, the loss to Zhang Weili. But she did actually show flashes, even though she technically lost 3 or 4 times in that fight.
Yeah, she lost by submission about 2 times, but she still won 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So it was a good fight from her. I really like Yan Jianan because she's exciting. Like, she's a great kickboxer, has a little bit of power, and not like awful on the ground. Like, she didn't get submitted by Zhang Weili, but kind of did. So it's a weird situation because Virna Jandiroba is really good on the ground. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I think this could be a boring fight where Virna Jandiroba holds her down for 3 rounds.
I don't think so. I
hope it isn't, but I think it will be.
I'm riding with the underdog.
Okay.
Yan Jianan is the underdog.
Do you know how much of an underdog?
She's about plus 130. So I mean,
okay, it's not bad.
Virna is about minus 150. But I don't. How hot of a take is this that Yan Jianan is the second best women's mixed martial artist in the world?
I think you got what's that? Kayla Harrison, probably.
Kayla Harrison looked bad her last time out.
I know, but
she's just strong.
Yeah,
she's
just
biologically
she's
a male.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I mean, I'm gonna go with the Yan decision ultimately.
All right, well then I'm gonna go over in a Jandiroba decision, 29-28. I think it's gonna be close. I think Yan Jianan's gonna have better striking on the feet, obviously, but it's just gonna be like if she can get takedowns, then it's over.
All right, our final prelim, which is looking like it's gonna be the featured prelim: Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. First off, Lucas, in your opinion, should it be illegal to be 6'2" and be a featherweight?
He does have the craziest build of all time.
6'2" featherweight.
His legs are just like poles, you know? They're like telephone poles on him. Yeah.
Telephone poles are thick, like walking poles. Poles.
yeah. That's a better. I don't know. I like Sean Woodson a lot. Like, I think he has potential, and it looks like he's improving a little bit with each fight. I remember watching his not last fight. He dominated his last fight against Padilla, just first round KO. Like, absolutely pinpoint accuracy to knock him out. But before that, I don't know if it was Charles Jourdain or is the one in the middle, but he kind of gassed out in the third round after throwing quite a bit of volume, which makes sense.
Well, and I think gassing against Ige is a little bit sus.
Yeah.
Because Ige has pretty good cardio. You know,
yeah,
we saw in that
Lopes
fight on short notice.
And even the Murphy fight, we know how good.
I think Ige won that third round.
It was very close.
It was
very close, which is why people were calling it like
yeah.
But yeah, we know how good Lerone Murphy is now. You know, he's technically the 7th ranked featherweight. So if Dan Ige was able to put up a very close decision, he's still a great fighter. He can still like put on a pace for 3 rounds. I want to go Dan Ige here. I'm going to be honest.
So this is like what I was thinking about when I was thinking about this. Is like, you know, you have Woodson. He's on a 7-fight unbeaten streak. Maybe the most underrated featherweight prospect. You know,
probably is.
Crazy height and reach advantage. But then you just have like the grit of 50K Ige.
Mm-hmm. Like,
you know,
how good is Sean Woodson's chin right now? If he gets hit with a shot like Lerone Murphy got hit by, is he going out?
Yeah, it's tough. You know, and it's like brain is like, you know, obviously it's Woodson, you know, but then heart is like it's Ige, because I think with Ige is all of his losses have been to like guys who were coming up as top prospects. You have the Bryce Mitchells, you have the Lerone Murphys, you have all guys like the Movsar Evloevs, guys in that similar category who were coming up as these big prospects. So if Sean Woodson beats Ige, it's like a big thing. It's like, you know what, like he's like, I don't want to call him legit, but he's like, he's legit, you know?
Well, Dan Ige still holds rank 14, so Sean Woodson would be ranked after this.
Yeah,
this is probably one of the closest ones to predict. I'll go Dan Ige. Just I need to see Dan Ige get a win again, you know? It's been Murphy loss, Lopez loss. Those guys are both really strong. I just don't think Sean Woodson is quite that caliber.
You know?
And if Ige can mix in the wrestling, those legs are just ripe for the breaking.
Yeah, and I think with Ige's history of losing to the guys that are the big guys coming up, I don't know. I'm torn, but I think to switch it up, I'll go Woodson here.
All right.
It's a tough one. That might be the toughest pick of the card.
And he's not an undefeated prospect, so he has a better chance, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the main card. This is where things are getting exciting. First on the card, we got it moved up. It's Krylov versus Reyes.
You know what? Thinking about this fight, Krylov has crazy power. Reyes has no chin.
And shades of Yuri Prohaska.
If only the UFC was as simple as that. You know? If only these predictions were as simple as that.
Yeah, but at light heavyweight, it never goes that smoothly.
Yeah.
Reyes could land something crazy. He's looked very... I won't say better. Very good. He's looked better in his last couple of fights. You know, he goes from losing to Ryan Spann And now he's winning against Anthony Smith and Dustin Jacoby. Jacoby got that crazy KO over Vitor Petrino in his last fight. So, his win is aging well, but it's not like he's impressed. That Lionheart fight was sad. That was sad.
He's on this mini resurgence, and I think that's where all of his hype is coming from. He has slow resurgence. They're like, the talks were like, oh, could he get back up there? Light heavyweight's so weak, but it's like, at the end of the day, he's just not the man he was when he fought Jones.
No, and I don't think he ever will be. Like that confidence, the hairline, it's just nothing's ever the same. I really want this to continue, and I think that he does have a chance. Of course he has a chance, but the logical pick has to be Krylov. He's just better. He follows through on his punches. He has power. He still has a chin. Like, that's pretty much what you got to evaluate at light heavyweight, I don't see this going to the ground. They're just going to be standing and banging, and we're going to see who drops first.
Yeah, and I think with this fight is obviously I'll be rooting for Reyes.
Everyone will be.
Everyone's going to be rooting for Reyes, but coming into it from a prediction standpoint, we want to get these predictions right. We're not just throwing stuff out there. It's got to be Krylov, and I think you might even get a round 1 KO.
Yeah, I could see that. Remember in the Lionheart fight, I think it was the first round, Reyes came on really strong, was piecing him up a little bit, and then Smith low-key came back at the end of the round, and you're like, come on, bro. Like, it's Smith. At this point in his career, he's one of the worst fighters.
Yeah.
Where do you think Smith ranks? In terms of, like, you have to be in the rankings. Is he one of the worst fighters in the rankings? I'd say heavyweight probably has some worse fighters.
Yeah, but
it's pretty
close. You even look at, like, some of the weaker weight classes. The guys that are at the bottom of flyweight, Van and Asakura, are miles better than a guy like Anthony Smith.
Yeah.
So, and you look at a welterweight, guys like Jeff Neal, way better. It's a win that has name value to it because it's Anthony Smith. But
it's not impressive in 2025 anymore.
When is that Smith versus the GOAT fight happening? I swear that was supposed to be 314.
No, I think it's Kansas maybe.
Oh, yep, you're right. But yeah, I'm going Krylov round 1 KO.
Same. I'll follow.
All right. Maybe the most anticipated fight on this card. Not maybe. It is the most anticipated fight. Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. And when do you have a fight that isn't even like a main event or a co-main event of a pay-per-view that has as much hype as this fight has?
It's been a while.
And it's not from the UFC. It is from these two fighters themselves.
This is what we need.
That are creating this hype because of this actual, I don't know if I want to call it hatred. It seems a little bit intense, but there seems to be genuine hatred between these two fighters. There's so much animosity building up between the two of them that I am so excited for this fight.
Yeah, I really don't want to miss this one. I'm going to try and be back in time for this.
You better.
I really want to see it live.
It's a pay-per-view. They're always delayed.
True. So what? This will be at like 8:30.
But be here at 8.
All right.
Get here by 8.
I'm hyped for this fight because it has a storyline behind it. This is what we need for the UFC to be back in 2025. We need pay-per-view cards that have 5 fights on the main card that you are looking forward to and that mean something in each division, or at least they're good matchups. This is a great matchup. I feel like they're at a similar, they're crossing paths in their career. Gene Silva's on a big upturn. Bryce Mitchell on a small downturn. A win over Kron Gracie doesn't do anything for me, No. So his last loss was to Josh Emmett, which was brutal. Obviously, your chin doesn't recover to 100% after a knockout like that. It's just impossible, right? So he is changed forever after that fight. And it's going to be interesting to see how he takes a punch because Kron Gracie ain't throwing a punch at him.
No.
So this is going to be the first time where we actually see Bryce Mitchell's chin tested again from a big power puncher. We know Gene Silva has that one-hitter quitter power. Melsik Bagdasarian felt that. So I think the hardcores are going, oh, it's Bryce Mitchell, man. People are underrating his twisters. Like, I know he has one of the 3 twister wins in history.
If he twisters Gene Silva, this account's gone. We're quitting.
We'll rename the account Twister Fister or something.
I know. I think it's tough because I do actually think that Bryce Mitchell at this point in his career is actually a little bit underrated. Yeah. I think that he's overhated, underrated.
Yeah.
Not overhated. He deserves what he gets.
Farm jitsu.
But Gene Silva is the prospect, I'm saying this video after video, is the prospect in the UFC that I'm the most confident in. Mm-hmm. I think that is it crazy to say that win over Bryce Mitchell, and then I think like he likely fights a guy like Yair Rodriguez if he beats Pitbull, belt after that.
Yeah.
He's if he beats Bryce Mitchell, he's one fight away from the belt.
I mean,
because featherweight has nothing up there. You have old guys leaving, and Movsar Evloev.
Think about, they were going to do Carlos Pratas versus Rachmanov. Like,
Yeah.
the fighting nerds have the UFC in the palm of their hands at this point. You know, if he keeps winning in dominant fashion, and I think Dana wants Bryce Mitchell to get KO.
Oh.
You know, he knows it's good for the sport at this point.
Yeah.
It'll be a big viral clip again.
He's putting brass beads in the gloves of Silva. Hit him a little extra.
Don't check those ones. Don't check those ones. Right?
Tate, you better not touch those.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who are predicting this fight forget that the Kron Gracie fight ever happened. Like, I know that Bryce Mitchell technically finished him, but Kron Gracie, I mean, is he cut now? Like, he's not a deserving UFC fighter.
He's not in the UFC anymore.
He's not a deserving UFC fighter. And for Bryce Mitchell to even have that matchup is an absolute joke. He's still in the rankings. Kron Gracie is probably like number 90 featherweight in the world, like right at the bottom.
I might be a higher ranked featherweight. I can't even cut down that far.
Yeah, and I mean, Gene Silva is just on this tear right now. The only thing I'm worried about is Gene Silva rushing in and getting overzealous, and then Bryce Mitchell being able to land easy takedowns. You know, we've seen Gene Silva defend takedowns from Drew Dober, but Drew Dober was beaten up, and against white fighters, he's not good. And then against Charles Jourdain, Gene Silva was getting taken down quite a bit, and that doesn't really fare well for this fight. But in defense, I would say that he probably didn't train for takedowns in Charles Jourdain, because you're not expecting that.
Yeah.
So it probably surprised him, and maybe it worked twice, but then the next couple times you can shove him off.
Yeah, you know, Barajo is in there every day. You know, he's like defend the takedown.
Gene Silva knows what he's getting into in this fight, and he's going to be prepared. I don't think he's autistic, but he's not dumb. You know?
That's what I'd be saying. Represent.
Yeah, I've used that one to defend you a couple times. Again, around the Huz. He's autistic, but he's not dumb, all right?
Yeah, I think ultimately you couldn't pay me to pick Bryce Mitchell here, especially against Gene Silva. Like,
fair.
I think that we are going to get to see Silva's takedown defense at this point in 2025 tested here. I think we're going to get to see his submission defense, his bottom game tested, and I'm excited to see that. I want to see good flashes, because what happens if Gene Silva has to go and fight Movsar Evloev next? You know?
Kill me now.
You know, so...
But if he wins that fight, he's my hero.
I'm going Silva round 1 KO over Bryce Mitchell.
Yes. Now moving on to...
What's your prediction?
Oh, dude, it's Gene Silva. But I'm going to go... I'll go decision. You know, I think Bryce Mitchell will hang on for the fight. He's not going to get that
Barajo stuff.
Exactly.
Go to decision.
Exactly. All right. Next up, the featured fight. We got Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. Probably another one that's difficult to predict, because
so tough.
Pitbull, like, it's different when these fighters come from Bellator. But actually, they've been having a lot of success from other promotions. We got RDR, and there was another one who recently came. I mean, Kayla Harrison obviously had success.
Kaya Sakura.
Okay, not him. Not him. But there's been multiple fighters who have been coming over and having wins in their debut fight. So it bodes well for Pitbull, but he's 37.
37. I didn't realize how old he was.
He looks good for 37, I'll be honest.
Like, it doesn't make sense when these fighters are coming over so old.
I know. What is Dana doing?
It seems basically the same thing as MVP.
Yeah, okay, that's another one.
But
MVP
he's fighting a much better opponent here.
Yeah, and MVP has the style where he can get older. You know, he's not taking much damage. His style is too weird for people to figure out. Pitbull, I mean, he has kind of that brawler, good takedowns, big overhands, like classic brawler.
And it's not even like this is like prime Pitbull, who had just, like, you know, beaten Michael Chandler.
Exactly.
He's 1-2 in his last 3.
Yeah, and KO losses too. Like, brutal.
So both guys have had their chins, like, tested. You know, I think that if we're looking at it from a chin standpoint, they're pretty even. But we're also in featherweight here. You know, the age is a big factor. Yeah, 37 versus 31. I mean, 32, however old Pip or
not even Volk is 37.
Yeah, like 37 is old, and with the lack of UFC experience, you know, the 1 and 2 coming into this, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a tough one to predict. You know, everyone's predicting, you know, Pitbull. They think he's gonna beat Yair, and I'm not high on Yair. Like, I might be one of Yair's biggest haters, but I'm also not high on Pitbull coming into this fight. I think inevitably we're gonna get a Yair decision win here, but.
Yeah, it could be a KO. Yair throws some wild stuff. You never know if it's going to be a KO or if he's just going to touch him up on the feet for 3 rounds. I think more likely than not, it's going to be a decision for Yair. I think it's going to be dominant 30-27. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance.
Send it back home.
Yeah, he's had losses to Volk on the ground and Brian Ortega on the ground. But those are two of the best finishers on the ground, right? Like, these guys look for finishes all the time. Brian Ortega is so underrated. And I don't think Pitbull's going to have that wrestling to match a Volk, you know? People have been saying that Pitbull's a poor man's Volk, and it's an accurate comparison, you know? Not as good at boxing, not as good at wrestling, not as good at ground and pound. Like, he's just not as good
of a chef.
So true.
But yeah, I think that this one, like, first coming into it was a little bit tough to predict, but once you really dove into it, it got a lot easier. And I'm pretty confident in Yair here.
Yeah.
Even though both guys do have the potential to get chinned.
It's true. Yair could get chinned brutally, and we're completely wrong. But.
Fight of the night incoming, the main event, the true man's main event, Michael Chandler versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett.
Mm-hmm.
This one, you know, obviously as Paddy Pimblett's #1 fan, he's my favorite fighter. There's no way that I'm not going Paddy in this fight. You know, I'm obviously taking Paddy, but this is probably the matchup that scares me the most. In around there, you know, Darnoush, Moicano, Fiziev, those guys wouldn't scare me as much as Michael Chandler scares me, just because the unpredictability and the excitability of Michael Chandler, like, it's tough. You know, because Michael Chandler's a fighter that has grown on me. You know, just because he goes out there and he does Michael Chandler, you can't describe what Michael Chandler does. He does Mike Chandler.
Yeah,
you know,
there's no fighter like him.
No, he's awesome to watch, which makes me so scared for Paddy, because you never know what can happen with Michael Chandler.
Yeah, I love this fight. This is the perfect matchup for Paddy. It's a big step up.
Yeah, and a big name, like a huge name. Kind of similar to what we were talking about with Gene Silva, the fight where, like, the type of opponent where you beat Michael Chandler, you could be one fight off from the belt.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I like Chandler in this fight a lot, actually. I think he has way more power than Paddy. Yep. I think he's just fought higher level opponents, you know? You have... how many rounds? 7 rounds of experience with Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, which is huge against Paddy.
It's huge.
Jiu-jitsu actually is very underrated. I think people discredit Paddy a lot. They love to write him off as a joke fighter. You know, they put him in the same category as Chiwewe, basically. But he is a legit lightweight prospect, future contender. I'm not going to say future champion. You know, he is legit. But Michael Chandler's, like, we've seen the defense against Dubronx with the best jiu-jitsu in UFC history.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's tough for Paddy here.
Yeah, and the one thing that I went back to is everyone's looking at Paddy's last fight, which was his most impressive performance against the highest level opponent that he's faced. But King Green, or Bobby Green, just jumped into his guillotine, or I guess into the ground, and then, you know,
whatever
arm triangle.
3 submissions he put on him.
Exactly. So, you know, Paddy didn't really have to work for that on the ground. He didn't have to maneuver. He didn't hold his back. He didn't control him for a long time. I don't rate Bobby Green very highly, especially after seeing his terrible run in the last couple fights.
But how do you rate King Green?
Oh, true. That's totally different, actually.
King Green's 0-2, actually.
I just don't love Paddy's chances in this fight. I don't know why. I don't think he's going to be able to manhandle Chandler. Chandler's a beast. Like, he's strong. He's short, so he doesn't, like, have to weight cut a brutal amount. You know, Paddy's a big lightweight.
He is.
He's a fat lightweight. All right, he's a very fat lightweight. He's obviously getting better. Chandler's probably on the decline a little bit, and he's 38. Chandler's 38. So age plays a factor, and I'm always the first one to talk about how age is, like, my #1 thing.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say it was just a number.
No. That's crazy. That's crazy. I'm going to go Chandler by round 2 KO. I think it's going to be a competitive first round. I think Chandler's going to land some big shots. He's going to rush in like he always does, probably. Paddy might get him to the ground, and then they're going to reset, and he's going to catch him.
Yeah, this is a tough one. You know, this is the type of fight where I will not be sitting down. I will be on the edge of my seat, hopping around my living room, so stressed out. But I think Paddy the Baddy can get it done. I'm going round 2 submission for Paddy. You know, I just think that his jiu-jitsu is so good. And I do think it's tough to submit Michael Chandler, but he has been submitted by a guy like Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
You know, that's my hold on for hope, because I think that going to decision in this fight with Michael Chandler just plays into Michael Chandler's hands much better. You know, we've seen him go out and beat Charles Oliveira in the 5th round, it looked like he was going to have the greatest comeback of all time, you know?
Imagine the timeline we'd live in. Makhachev versus Chandler for the belt.
No.
Chandler by KO.
All right, main event time. Before we get into the main event, we have a full video talking about this main event, breaking it down, giving our predictions in that video as well. But we're going to go over it a little bit more briefly than we did in that video. So if you want a full video of us talking about it, go check it out. I think it would have been our last video that we posted.
Yeah, dude, Volk versus Lopes. I think Volk can do it. I think he's going to break the curse like we talked about in his last video. He's more technical. He has better distance management. He has more versatile kicks and boxing. He has great wrestling, and he's virtually impossible to submit. We saw in that Brian Ortega fight. And three fights with Max Holloway. How many minutes is that? Like 45?
75.
45 minutes. Oh yeah, 75 because there's 5 rounds. Jeez. Like how can I pick against this man? The only chance Lopes has is if he catches him.
Yeah.
And Volk can be caught. We've seen it multiple times. I'm really worried for him, man. I'm really worried. And I saw Lopes aura farming.
Oh, he's such an aura farmer.
He's such an aura farmer at the press conference. Yeah, with his Mexican hat on and the shadow covering his face. Like that almost made me change my pick, but I'm going to pick with my heart, I guess with my head too, because I just think he's better in general. I think if Volk shows up and he's even like 85% of the fighter he was in the 3rd Max fight, I think he can win against Lopes. Like Lopes is a good fighter. I don't think he's elite.
No, I think he is. If elite is S tier, I think Lopes is A.
Yeah.
You know, he is a tier below. It's just what stage is Volk in his
And
career.
if Lopes wins, I think he's going to be a transitional champion.
It'll be either Movsar or Silva will take the belt from him.
Or who's the other person? Oh, Pitbull. Sheesh.
You know, I think that, honestly, the UFC is hoping Lopes wins here, you know, because then 3 months later in September, that would be 6 months later. He actually has a pretty big turnaround, but you'd think he would main event UFC Noche if he gets.
Oh, true.
You know,
he'd love that.
Him versus Evloev in the main event.
Oh,
I just puked in my mouth. Movsar main eventing a pay-per-view.
The day we see that,
I'm getting deja vu from Marab versus Sean in that fight.
Honestly, yeah. That is.
Oh,
so similar.
This guy needs to just be on the treadmill for 6 months in between.
Noche is cooked. Forever.
But I think that Volk obviously is the more skilled fighter in this fight. You know,
he's probably still one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC.
Oh yeah,
top 3,
and he ain't 3. Just kidding, he is
3 or 4.
But you know, I'm looking at it. I want to be different from you, but it's also one of those fights where I'm okay doing that because either fight wins and you're okay with it. You know, they're both 2 of the most lovable fighters inside of the UFC right now, and I think it would be awesome to see this legendary 2-year run of Diego Lopes. You know?
I would love to see that. The storyline completes itself.
So either way, you're not going home crying. You know, it might hurt a little bit for
like
a second,
Pereira.
But you know,
I was crying in the car.
I'm gonna go with the Lopes round 2 knockout on the uppercut. You just gotta catch him.
I think out of the clinch, if he can defend a takedown. I saw Max Holloway catching Volk with punches out of the clinch with hooks. I think that's dangerous at this point in Volk's career, you know? He just can't eat those anymore, I don't think. Yeah. I'm very interested in seeing how Volk's chin holds up. Like, is he going to get stunned by, like, nothing?
Or do we see Lopes do the same thing he did against Ortega, where he just blitzes it immediately and catches him?
That would be insane,
But I think Volk will be aware of that.
Yeah, I think Volk shoots early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why risk it?
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll, you know,
rugby tackle.
Box him up with jabs and leg kicks in the beginning, but as soon as Lopes makes that overcommitment, which he does a lot, just dive for the legs, man.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing you do see with Diego Lopes is just as skilled as he is, he just lacks a little technique. You know, he gets a little bit sloppy.
True.
And I think that is where his opponents have been able to capitalize on him in the past, is the bit of sloppiness that he has.
Even Evloev and Brian Ortega and Dan Ige, like he just goes for shit and doesn't care.
Yeah.
Which is why we love him and why he gets finishes all the time. But it's also why he gets ground and pounded.
Yeah, and like there's a world where we see him lose here and then goes on a tough run.
Yeah. There's a lot of good
because
fighters.
that's the type of fighter that he is, though. His peak will be amazing, but that downfall going to hit hard.
Well, to be fair, he did lose his opening fight,
Yeah.
his debut fight against Movsar, and then went on a crazy run. So who knows? It's going to be a good fight. I'm going to go Volk by ground and pound. That's the last time Lopez was finished. It was by ground and pound. So I think it's going to happen again. Unfortunately, I would hate to see Lopez be KO'd. It's going to hurt my soul, but I think round 3, ground and pound finish.
How are we feeling in terms of pay-per-view of the year? Like, does this have the potential?
I mean, if the fights are good.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that we might see a lot of decisions in the prelims and early prelims. I think that could be a deciding factor because I think the main card's going to be great.
Yeah, I think this main card has potential to be all finishes.
And it's probably our best main card of the year so far.
Right. They put Krylov versus Reyes on the main card because they want to finish, That's a great fight. Guaranteed finish almost. Gene Silva, Bryce Mitchell, very high likelihood of a finish, even from Bryce Mitchell. Yair versus Pitbull, again, 2 strikers. Pitbull can wrestle, but Chandler versus Patty, you'd expect Chandler to be looking for a finish, and it's 5 rounds, don't forget that. And then Volk versus Lopez, almost a guaranteed finish in my mind. So yeah, I think this could be a goated main card. I think this is going to be like maybe a 299 where we look back on it and be like, damn, that was unreal.
All right, on the spot, good surprise of the night.
Good surprise of the night. I mean, if I'm predicting Chandler to win, I think that's a good surprise. Bro has not won in like how many years now? 3?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I'll go Chandler for good surprise.
I think my good surprise has to be Yan Janon here. She is the underdog in that fight, and I think she's really going to prove that, she's going to hold up to being one of the best women's mixed martial artists in the world. Bust of the night.
Bust of the night. Me when Volk wins the title.
I think for me it has to be Pitbull. I think that the age is just going to really be on show there.
Dude, you know what? I'm going to double down on my boy Gene Silva to win.
Yeah.
I think Bryce Mitchell is going to be bust of the night. I cannot stand all these hardcores picking Bryce Mitchell saying he's going to twister my boy. All right, Gene Silva is going to just go out there and do his thing, prove why he's the number one prospect in that division.
And finally, your Hail Mary on the spot.
I guess since we already talked about it, I'll go every single fight on the main card as a finish.
All right, I'm doing a parlay here.
Okay.
Bryce Mitchell has another seizure. And Michael Chandler loses and calls out McGregor. You heard it here first. If this is right...
That's crazy. I mean, it could happen. Like, there's a high likelihood.
There's a chance. All right, but that's going to wrap it up for us today. Those are our 314 full card predictions. Go down to the comments. Let us know. Give us your predictions for this card. Let us know, are you excited? What fight are you looking forward to the most while you guys are down there? Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. We appreciate all the love and support. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
See ya.